Hello, everyone, and welcome. We have folks coming in from the waiting room. We'll give them a moment to try and get settled in. But wherever you are coming from and whatever time of day it is, we really want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. While everyone's getting settled in, I'm going to hand it over to Kat to learn something.
Yes. Okay, so we just want to get a temperature on where you are with one of the issues that we will dive into today. So in the face of significant risk, however you would define that, how long would it take you to adjust scope or whatever makes sense to you and reallocate your resources? So if something changed and you had to respond to it, what would it take? Would it take you less than a week? Would it take less than a month? Would it take more than a month? No right or wrong answers. We've seen it all. We're just really curious about where you all are.
While you're looking and thinking through that challenging question, what we're going to cover in the next 25 minutes or so is, one, we're going to talk about why this research matters, specifically who it impacts, so who participated in that study, which I think many of you will find you have familiarity with. The three key data points, the ones that we found the most shaped the ROI outcomes that were possible for business. And then finally, what you can do with this information. So what does this mean for the decisions that you are making in your portfolios? And how can you create more opportunities for teams to deliver all the things that they want to deliver and hit those goals? With me today, though, let me introduce, because we've just been talking heads for the last minute or two. My name is Evelyn Watts. I am the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Tempo, and I'm joined with Catherine Gray, our Senior Product Marketer, who's running and leading our adaptive SPM products. So that's us. One thing that I will say that you're going to hear a couple of stories from us. Product marketing lives between two worlds. We live within the product world and we live within the marketing world. So Kat and I want to be able to share some context around why we find this data so interesting.
It's true. Let's dive in. We see it all from all angles. So first, why did we do this research in the first place? This is coming from the fact that when we talk to our customers and the broader community, we do see that portfolios are getting more complex. That's probably a shock to nobody. But what we are starting to see is that people are having to respond to change even more frequently. And we even see signs that planning confidence is rising. That's great. Everybody wants to see that. But we also see that that confidence doesn't necessarily match better results. So we wanted to understand that disconnect. And we learned people aren't delusional. People can only report on what they can see. And as it turns out, they can miss a lot. So this report looks at how teams actually respond when things change, how that impacts their businesses, and the common characteristics of the high-performance teams. And we are pleased to say there are many, and we're going to go into that a little bit deeper.
All right. So first off, who did we talk to? So starting in the fall of last year, we went through a rigorous survey process that included 667 planning and PMO leaders globally. So we made sure we looked at 43 different countries participating. Now, the survey captures the perspectives of a range of different portfolio management topics. So anything from project visibility to decision cadence and scenario planning adoption, and also AI usage in enterprise planning, and ultimately the value realization from those investments. So in parallel, besides getting all of these lovely data points, we also synthesized quite a bit of research from 30 academic papers that really cover the known metrics and cost of business planning. And then also 70 to 80 different industry studies, all really on the psychology and behavior of how people approach planning and the impact of the bottom line. Now, the reason we went through this exercise, we did this as part of our own customer research and market research to really understand overall the cost of the problem that enterprises are experiencing, that businesses are experiencing, and then how we can solve that with our upcoming product releases for Adaptive Planner and Insights. So we're sharing data early with you all because we learned that there's significant value not only in investing in tools that will help you adapt to this continuous change, especially in a world that moves at the speed of AI, but also in prioritizing a culture of alignment. Now, towards the end of this short overview session, we'll provide a link because anyone on this call will have early access to this report, which will be published later in February. So until then, let's give you a deeper dive into what you'll be seeing in that report and some of those key takeaways. Kat, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. So yeah, like Evelyn said, it wasn't just a survey. We did a lot of other research and synthesized that, and we found a lot. So we're going to go into the 3 main takeaways today. People do feel confident about what they can see in their own team, like we said, and that's great. But when we dig deeper, we found that many respondents don't have full visibility across the organization, and nor do their leaders have a sense of interconnectedness amongst teams. And that's kind of concerning. What this means is they can't always anticipate how change elsewhere will impact programs. And when they need to reforecast, especially around shared team capacity, they are reacting with incomplete information. So we're gonna unpack the impact of that. First, we see the alignment illusion, is what we're calling it, where leaders feel aligned, but often only within their own portfolio. The other one is the adaptability gaps. Again, this is when confidence in adapting is high. They think they can do it, but the speed of reallocating people and priorities tells a different story. That's that we started with. And third, failure isn't in the execution. The friction isn't at the team level. It's not your fault. It's how decisions and resources move across the enterprise. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into all of those.
Cool. Thank you, Kat. So let's start with the alignment illusion. Now, this confidence rate's high on this one, Kat. So one of the most interesting stats that came out of this was really that it's very encouraging. Honestly, this is good news, that 90% of respondents say that their organizations encourage adaptability and alignment across all teams. Now, on the surface, that sounds amazing. The encouragement is there, the intent is there, the spirit is willing. But when we dug into the actual details of that, we saw a very different picture. When we asked additional questions to find out where the most improvement could be seen or what they would like to see to improve the ability to deliver those strategic outcomes, the goals that teams are working towards. Funny enough, the 3 top answers were improved cross-functional alignment. Those 90% of confidence level is pretty high, but there's a really strong correlation with not enough alignment. Better visibility and reporting, and of course, stronger prioritization. So that's interesting when you compare it to the perception side. The portfolio alignment looks strong, people are aligned, especially in their own domain, what they can see. So on paper, everything appears coordinated, just like our lives, Kat. Everything looks coordinated, and then children. Yeah. So one thing that respondents also pointed to is the lack of alignment on overall business strategy. And that's where they say they run into competing priorities across business units. Kat and I live this every day.
Mm-hmm.
And which will for sure impact execution and thus those outcomes. So here's the tension. Alignment is encouraged, but it isn't actually happening consistently across the organization. So in other words, Kat, organizations aren't even aligned on being aligned. Cute, right?
Yes, it happened. Okay, so what's going on? So people, like she said, are feeling aligned about what they can control inside their own portfolio. Portfolios look clear, execution's on track. Like I said, the JIRA all looks good. Benefits are all there. At the same time, they do recognize they're operating in silos. The respondents did tell us. So what's happening? We think that there is a lack of shared data that allows for decision clarity across the organization. You just can't see what other people are doing. And what happens is this. Decisions are made without full visibility. Trade-offs happen in isolation. You don't know how this is going to affect someone else. And that downstream impact of these decisions, it's not always clear. So like Evelyn was saying, sitting in product marketing, you kind of interact with everybody. And so you can kind of see how these things play out. So I have an example, Evelyn, from a past life. More or less what happened was marketing makes a decision that inadvertently affects trend. They cut back on a program that supports retention, like a customer marketing program, also designed to support expansion because they had other priorities, like totally rational, totally understandable. But what that did was it shifted pressure to the customer success team to work harder for that net retained revenue, that number that they're measured on, and the trend started to tick up over time. Meanwhile, the product team was busy working on these new features that the customers had asked for. And the idea was that this was supposed to support that retention. So when they released, they expected a certain lift, but they never got to that number that they were hoping for. It didn't, it's the investment that they had made. And they didn't know why. And this is classic siloed misalignment. No one failed. Every team did their job based on their priorities. And the breakdown happened in between all of those decisions. And so let's talk about the next contradiction in the data.
All right. Now, how do we adapt and where is the gap? So this one I find goes along quite well with confidence because we are optimistic humans. But this is wherein lies the contradiction in the data. 60% of our respondents said that they are very or extremely confident in their organization's ability to adapt quickly to market, business changes, what have you. At the same time, 1 in 5 tell us that it takes over a month to reforecast budgets and resources after a significant change. So what that tells us is high confidence is not the same as capability. And what makes this most interesting is not the numbers themselves, not the 21%. It's the contrast between those two. 2/3 feel highly confident, and yet it takes over a month to reallocate. What that tells us is that adaptability is uneven, and some of this confidence may be masking the reality underneath what actions are actually happening. And because this is self-reported, that number may be lower than reality.
Yeah.
High confidence, Kat. You know, what my family... What was most interesting about this is that taking a month to respond, and in cases this might be perfectly legitimate, but that time to respond can be costly. So it's not, and in that case, you're not really adapting. You might be running your entire planning program cycle all over again.
Yeah.
So adaptability isn't about belief or all of the good governance rituals that we have many examples of in different frameworks. But it's honestly how fast your organization can change its mind and reallocate people, money, time, and scope accordingly. So good question. Instead of asking yourselves, are we adaptable? Because I'd like to say I am. Of course you are. Yeah, we do all the time. A better question would be, how long does it take us to reallocate those resources when something shifts? Because I think that's in where the numbers are. That's the reality. Of measuring what the capability for adaptability is.
Right. So, and then there's the people that told us that they don't feel confident. There were some of those too. So I would venture to guess for those that don't feel like they're particularly good at adapting, things can feel pretty chaotic. And we think we know why. First, priorities aren't being reevaluated frequently enough. Over half the respondents say they reevaluate portfolio priorities quarterly or annually. And in a very stable environment, that might be fine. But the other thing that they told us is that they tend to feel like their market is volatile, that things are changing quickly. So that cadence, that quarterly or annually, that's simply not fast enough. That's not often enough. Second, cross-portfolio processes are fragmented. 34% report that their portfolio management processes are integrated within their team, but not across the business. So that's the definition of siloing. So decisions are coordinated locally, but not enterprise-wide. And when something changes, those signals can get missed. So those leading indicators that kind of tell you where you're going, that means that decisions can lag behind. So it all comes back to the fact that the data and the processes aren't connected across the organization.
Kat, we know that data helps us make good decisions. So let's get to our third key finding. And I think this one's quite interesting because failure doesn't necessarily mean failure. What we found is that asking these questions of where is the challenge? Where are the biggest struggle in actually executing the projects the way that need to get done that align to those goals? And the number one answer was capacity, understanding what your team's capacity is. And there's no team who's at fault for not having enough people. If the wrong skills are assigned, then you can see that there's a decision-making problem upstream. The second problem, prioritization. I like how this all comes back to alignment. And that is not a delivery issue because the teams are working on what they need to be working on. They're working hard, but if they find they're not working on those right things, then you've now seeing an upstream problem with portfolio level clarity.
Right.
And again, not a delivery issue. So team execution rarely fails because teams can't deliver. It fails because leaders haven't seen those trade-offs clearly, and whether the right people are working on the right work or what shifting one priority over here may impact somewhere else. So many organizations plan their teams, Kat and I know this too, at 90% of project capacity because these are all the things we want to get done, and often forget about the 20% of the day-to-day work that needs to happen. And that doesn't always show up in these planning models. So you're already getting an overinflated amount of what you think you have capacity to do. So we'd say the constraint isn't effort. We can all put effort towards amazing things, but it's that visibility into capacity. And as a public service announcement to all, the solution is not turning and pushing teams to harder. It's about making better data-informed scenario planning that makes those trade-offs visible before they become those bottlenecks and we're leading to burnout.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So this was one of the most interesting findings, though I don't know how you felt, Evelyn. I didn't think it was that surprising. 70% of projects are delivering ROI. That's great, according to our respondents. Also, almost 1 out of 3 projects isn't delivering. And here's the counterintuitive part. That's probably good. Interesting that they know it. And here's why. The data tells us the more mature an organization's planning practices are, the more projects they cancel. I thought that was really interesting. High-performing teams cancel about 8% more projects, and they deliver significantly higher ROI. And that makes sense to me. If the signals show you won't hit your goals or a bigger opportunity emerges, canceling and reallocating is not failure. The real failure is protecting sunk costs. So this is what we're calling the cancellation paradox, because they don't treat plans as if they're set in stone. They treat each phase as a hypothesis, and they test their assumptions along the way, and they can stay open to new information. So these people, these high-performing teams, they do review more often, and they adjust faster, and they shift resources before all that value leaks away. So the difference, like you were saying, Evelyn, isn't in the execution, it's in the willingness and the ability to stop what isn't working.
Yes, knowledge is half the battle here.
Exactly.
So what we found when we think about those teams that are doing more scenario planning and measuring and trying to understand the trade-offs and the impacts of these decisions, this is where we found quite a bit of interesting insight. So those organizations that have been using scenario planning to kind of evaluate what's working, what's not working, what our options are to shift or micro-pivot the plans that they have in action, 80%, 85%, again, report being very confident, but what the difference we found here is not only are they twice as much more confident than other organizations who don't look at those trade-offs, who don't think through those scenarios. Yes, we said confidence and capability don't always match, but in this case, this level of confidence of what those decisions could be lead to those high-performing teams that then can cancel over 1/3 of projects they say are canceled early or stop early because they recognize that there's misalignment or there's a lack of ROI. So the difference isn't that high-performing teams make fewer wrong bets on what to do. It's that they can identify and make corrections much faster. Right. And we're not saying that scenario planning will eliminate uncertainty. You can never promise certainty, but you can think about the clarity that you need to make the trade-offs visible so that an organization can really make those shifts, or we call micro pivots, may they be, before that value is lost so they can recapture it and reinvest.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh?
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. And I think that's the leap that is really crucial, is being, go from having the confidence to do those tests early on, and not try to have the perfect plan in place in the beginning, just know that things are going to change. So like we said, in addition to the survey we did, our strategy team did a bunch of research, and they synthesized their findings. When they did this, they started to see a new model for adaptability at the enterprise level. So all these insights we've just discussed, that alignment illusion, the adaptability gap, and the failures in decision-making, they all point to this same issue that we've been talking about. What most orgs need is a new decision infrastructure. So traditional SPM was built to plan and execute and review in cycles. And that was great. It was better than what we had before. There's a lot of governance rules built in. That's fine. Sometimes people really need that. But it optimizes for control. So like we were saying, it sort of assumes you can get a really good plan in the beginning. And that model can't keep up with all the volatility that we are seeing today. So what the strategy team noticed is that high-performing organizations operate differently. They sense, they've got those leading indicators, and so they get a sense of what's going on. When they get those, they can decide, what do we do? Do we go forward? Do we adjust? Do we change? Do we cancel? And then they can reallocate. So they can reallocate resources. They can even change priorities. The strategy evolves, and those resources have a more of a flow state. They're not stuck in that cost fallacy, like working on projects that don't matter anymore. And the decisions are connected across the enterprise. So what they can do is they can shorten the distance between signal, that sensing, and making decisions. And that seems to be really key. So what we wanted to do was really understand what this means financially. So our strategy team built a model to articulate what the impact is when decisions are delayed and teams can't respond quickly, and when they can. So imagine a $20 million company, just as an example, and they invest about $7 million in their strategic growth. So this is not their overhead operations stuff. This is the stuff that they have put on their most important initiatives so that they can grow their companies. This is their investment in the future. So the question is whether that money is truly aligned and able to adapt when things change. We started thinking about it from a money sense. And even a modest misalignment can translate into about $700,000 in wasted effort. And that comes from all the things that we've been talking about, all of that misalignment. On the flip side, when you do have more of a flowy state and you do have teams aligned across the enterprise and you do have that visibility so that you can see what's going on and what those early signals are, improving alignment and responsiveness can unlock more than $1.3 million in value. So organizations, like we've been saying, may feel aligned, but they're making big investment decisions without seeing the full picture. And what's at risk is that $700,000 in waste. Nobody wants that. No. The number kind of sinks in.
Yeah, kind of freaks me out. And these are not our magic numbers. These are industry kind of accepted academic standards and us taking a very, very conservative approach. You'll see more of that in the report where we break it down a little further. But just to give a napkin math, so to speak, of what this could mean for the business. Yeah. One thing that I do want to share, though, is because we want to get to the report, is the way Tempo looks at solving these problems for our customers. One thing that we take a very conscious approach is the capabilities. We talked about confidence versus capability, and how can we make that bite size? So because organizations are at completely different scales, there's all sorts of different things happening. There is no one size fits all. And so what we do is we package up different capabilities that allow teams to kind of get to the next level of visibility within their team of teams, across the org. And so if any of these challenges are ones that resonate with you, we are more than happy to figure out where you are and what the next best step might be and how we could help you. So if any of these things do resonate with you, we'd love to be able to talk. And then I believe we're going to be sharing a link to that report in a couple of different ways. So one thing we do have is we'll be sharing a link in the chat, and as well, I'll show you in the deck. We do have a link as well. So when you do get a copy of the recording, you'll get a PDF version of these slides as well. So even if you don't capture it right now in the chat, no worries. We're going to send you a link to grab that report. Kat, I believe we have a question that came in, and someone moderating our questions in Q&A. But do you mind? This one I found was quite interesting. Do you mind helping us out with that question?
Yeah. Okay.
We live it.
Okay. It says, I know we should cancel or cut back a project that's not going well and isn't likely to improve. What advice do you have for bringing this? Oh, so bringing it up with the team. I don't have the authority to just axe it. Okay. If you don't have the authority to just cancel a project, understandable. So I would suggest that you frame it as protecting portfolio value, like we talked about with those numbers. So you may not have those hard numbers, but you may have some data. And I suggest bringing data to the table rather than your opinion. If you and your team are feeling like it's not going well, I'm sorry, but data is going to have more weight than opinion because probably somebody is invested in this. So perhaps some assumptions have changed. Whatever was kicking off this project, maybe you can talk about what capacity it's consuming and where you could see that capacity being reallocated. And maybe there's something else that you think is more important. Like one of the things that's really hard for teams is, if they are working on things that they don't feel are important, it's going to go slower. So your problems start to compound. People can feel it, and then you'll start to see it if you did measure it. So people feel like they're not doing well. They slow down. They get frustrated. People aren't communicating really well. Doesn't matter how great your Jira is, and so that can be something that you can address. You can present the trade-offs. If we continue, this is what's going to happen. If we reduce the scope or pause, here's what we unlock. And if you don't have that authority, I suggest that you just bring some clarity to the conversation.
Honestly, this has gotten me through a lot because even though I may not be the decider, I think all of our jobs are to make sure people have as much information as they can to make an informed decision. And then whatever we go forward. But I think that's the idea of keeping some receipts, showing some data. Because as an opinion, and some opinions are higher paid than others.
It's true. Facts over feelings. I mean, feelings matter. Like that does impact the team. But facts always sway better. Yeah, found.
All right. I think we are going to give people a minute of their time back. So if you do have any questions right now, it's a great time to pop them into that Q&A. You will, again, reiterating, you will all receive a copy of the presentation and sign up for early access to that report as soon as it's published, which will be, I believe, later in this month. Mm-hmm. And we hope that we've been helpful. And honestly, anytime you want to reach out, we want to do more of these things. So if feedback, you'll get a poll to feedback on this review, on this webinar content, our presenters, and what else you'd like to see from Tempo and how we can help. So please give us feedback. It's a gift. And we hope you enjoy the report and the data and can do some juicy things with it and help align your team. Thank you so much, Kat.
Yeah, thank you.